We can start over again. Good evening and welcome to an extended Inside Government for the spring 2020 semester here at CU Community College. This is a show that is broadcast on Spectrum, Verizon, Fios, the Auburn Regional Media Access, better known as ARMA, as well as WIN 89.1, the college's radio station. I'm your host, Guy Cosentino. While there has been very intense discussion about the presidential race, especially in the last 5 days, all of the House of Representatives and 1/3 of the United States Senate are up for election this year. Locally, there is a contested race for the 24th Congressional District that includes all of Cayuga, Onondaga, and Wayne counties, as well as parts of Oswego. Since 2014, Republican John Katko has represented the district. It is, according to one report, the only Democratic-leaning district in the country represented by a Republican. In 2018, Congressman Katko won re-election by 52% to 47, roughly, against Democratic challenger Dana Balter, who happens to be in our studio tonight. Congressman Katko is seeking re-election this year to a 4th term and is being challenged by 3 Democrats, Dana Balter, as well as Francis Canola and Roger Miso. Who we hope to bring you all 3 over the next couple of weeks to talk about their campaigns, as well as Congressman Katko. We're doing this because of several voter reforms that occurred in the New York State Legislature last year that moved up the annual congressional primary from September, where it had been for forever, to late June of every year. That allows us to experiment this spring with bringing all the candidates for the 24th Congressional District here. We have offered time to Ms. Balter, Mr. Canola, and Mr. Miso, who have all accepted and agreed to participate and talk about their campaigns and the issues facing this district. A similar invitation has been offered to Congressman Katko on March 17th when Congress is not in session and it's an in-district time for members of Congress, so we hope to have him here in 2 weeks. We plan to have all 3 candidates, by the way, here for congressional primary forum on Thursday, April 29th. I'll moderate it. Jeremy Boyer, the executive editor of The Citizen, will be asking the questions as usual. On Tuesday, Francis Canola was in our studio to have a discussion about his candidacy, and today we are delighted to have in the second in the series, Dana Balter, who has been here a couple of times over the last couple of years to come in and talk. Welcome.
Thank you so much for having me.
Well, we're delighted that the candidates are willing to come in and talk, and I think the most basic Roger Mudd question is, why are you running for Congress?
Well, I'm running for Congress now for largely the same reasons that I ran in the 2018 cycle. We have huge challenges facing our communities that we need to address, and I have a very simple belief that every person in our society is entitled to dignity, access, and opportunity. And I believe that we can have a central and western New York where everyone has those things, but we've got a long way to go to get there. So I want to go to Washington, D.C. to work on policy that holds those values at its heart, to fight for things like health care for everybody, because no one should be making choices like, do I fill this prescription or do I put food on the table this week? I want to fight for an economy that works for all of us, because all across our region, we have people who are working 2 and 3 jobs and still struggling to make ends meet, and that should not happen. And I want to go to fight to get money out of politics, because our political system right now is dominated by big money interests, and that's why we keep getting policy that serves the wealthiest people in this country and large corporations and leaves a lot of the rest of us behind. There's a lot of work to do, and I'm ready to roll up my sleeves and get to work.
So, did you think at some point you wouldn't run for a second time? I know there have been a number of people we know historically. Newt Gingrich is a perfect example. I think he ran once or twice before he was elected to the Congress from Georgia. Was there a time where you thought, well, 2018 was 2018, I'm done, I'm moving on?
No, there wasn't. We came so close to winning last cycle, as you cited in your introduction. we fell 5 points short. And what that means is now we need 2.5 more points in the vote to win. And when you look at where Congressman Katko had started when I got into the 2018 race, he'd won both of his previous races by more than 20 points. We knew when we started we were taking on a big fight and an uphill battle, and that it might take more than one cycle to get it done. But I think that you have to keep pushing, because I said it all through the last campaign. I meant it every time I said it. What we were doing is about more than one election. What we're doing is building a movement for change, and we see this happening all across the country. And that's not something that you walk away from. We made so much progress. We moved the vote 16 points. We outperformed the blue wave that swept the country, which was a 9 to 10 point movement in favor of Democrats. We did things this district has never seen before. We broke fundraising records. We broke volunteer records. We need to capitalize on those things to continue pushing for change. Walking away from that would be giving up our best opportunities to win. And I am committed to the fight. I'm committed to seeing it through, and I'm committed to seeing that Central and Western New York gets the representation it deserves.
So I don't want to concentrate a lot on 2018, but that is a baseline for you and for the campaign. So some real quick questions on that. Mm-hmm. We'll talk about money in this year's cycle, but let's talk about money 2018.
Sure.
How much did you raise in 2018, and how much did you spend?
We raised just over $2.7 million, which is more than any challenger had ever raised in this district. And we spent just about all of it.
So there was really nothing left over in 28.
It's about $20,000, I think.
Do you remember how much Congressman Katko raised and spent?
He raised just over $2.7 million.
Okay.
So when I started the race, we were at a $1.2 million fundraising deficit, and we caught up to him.
So you were not favored to win the primary 2 years ago, mm-hmm. but you did, correct?
By 25 points.
Okay. There was a lot of talk about momentum. Mm-hmm. People don't always remember that the time period between the old primary date and September and November is really compressed.
Very short, yes.
So do you think you peaked too early?
I don't think so.
Or do you think did you not have enough time for momentum?
I don't think we peaked too early. I think the primary election and the general election are really very different things. And they take different strategies to win. And what I actually think is we needed a couple more months in the general election. Had we had a couple more months, I think we would have won.
And the Democratic challenger, whoever's elected at the end of June, is going to have at least 2 more months, one way or the other.
Well, no, because our primary last time was in June also.
Oh, it was in June?
Yes, it was.
Was that the first time?
I believe it was the second time. It was the state primary that got moved to June last year.
Mistake on that.
So we had that full time, but one of the challenges, one of the most important things you have in a political campaign is name recognition. And one of the challenges that I was facing as a political newcomer is that I did not have name recognition. And
your primary opponent, Ms. Williams, did have name recognition.
She did, certainly in part of the district, yes, in Onondaga County.
Because she was, well, and that's a large chunk of this district.
Yes, it is, about 70% of the vote.
And she had worked for the Cuomo administration and had other tasks.
Yes.
So what's different this year, though, from 2 years ago in regards to the campaign itself?
So I think the name recognition piece is a huge difference, and it's one of the reasons why I'm confident that we're going to win this time. Because I have run a campaign, my name recognition is almost as high as John Katko's is, and he's the incumbent. That puts us on an even playing field that we were not on last time. It's one of the reasons why you want a second-time candidate to run. You mentioned an example, not one of my favorite politicians, Newt Gingrich.
I can give you some other ones who ran several times, and it wasn't the first time that worked. It took some time. There are a lot of members of Congress.
That's right. And one of the reasons you want candidates to run again, and that's maybe not true for everybody, but certainly if a candidate runs a strong campaign, one of the reasons you want candidates to run again is because they have things like name recognition and a base of support and a volunteer network that they can bring as resources into the next race, which gives them a leg up. And that is one of the primary things that makes this race different.
And has anything changed in your view personally about Congressman Katko from what your position was with his performance in 2018?
It's an interesting question. So I am
Took me a lot of time to word it.
I am still frustrated by all of the same things. I'm still angry about the same things. One thing that I think is different now, that I'm very interested in, is that John Katko is finally being upfront and honest about his support for Donald Trump. He has spent the last few years trying to convince all of us that he doesn't support the president, even though his actions have shown quite a different story. He now, just a few weeks ago, came out with a full-throated endorsement of the president. Just this week, he is bringing one of the president's most ardent and least ethical supporters, Devin Nunes, to this district to fundraise for him for his re-election campaign.
This is the $1,000 plate
Yes,
event?
yes. And I think that is refreshing, that he is finally willing to openly acknowledge that he is in fact supporting this president's agenda. And I think that makes a big difference.
So let me ask you this question. Were you surprised that, I think it was the Access Hollywood tape, if I have it correctly, back in 2018, that was one of the stated reasons, if I remember correctly, deterred him from endorsing
That's what he said, I believe, yeah.
then Mr. Trump from running, and now this has changed. Did that surprise you? Because there was that, the behavior from that Access Hollywood tape
Hasn't changed.
hasn't been erased, let's put it that way.
If anything, it's gotten worse. All of Donald Trump's behavior has gotten worse over time. Again, it doesn't surprise me, because while Congressman Katko has told us that he doesn't support Donald Trump, all of his actions speak to the contrary and show that he, in fact, does support Donald Trump. He has supported his agenda from day one. He has supported the rhetoric that he says he doesn't support by staying quiet in the face of it. I don't know how many more lessons from history we need to be given until we learn that if you stay silent in the face of hatred and discrimination and bigotry, then you are complicit in that hatred and discrimination and bigotry. And John Katko has continued to remain silent in the face of some of Donald Trump's most egregious assaults. And he has ardently defended him against in the impeachment investigation, which John Katko refused to even vote, never mind voting for impeachment, he voted against the investigation in the House. He has lied to us repeatedly about Donald Trump's actions. He lied to us about the Mueller report. He lied to us about the impeachment hearings. John Katko has lied to us about the Mueller report. He lied to us about the impeachment investigations. He continues to seem to be more interested in playing the role of defense attorney for Donald Trump than he is in representing our interests at this most critical time in history.
You mentioned that Mr. Katko is supporting the president for re-election. Let me ask you this question. Who are you, and the field as we speak today is
got very
diminished.
small.
So as we tape this at about 3 o'clock, Elizabeth Warren has either suspended her campaign or is not running. So you really now have I think there are legally 3 or 4. You've got Vice President Biden, Mr. Sanders, and then you have the representative from Hawaii who are still in. Who are you supporting?
I am supporting whoever the Democratic nominee is, because I believe any nominee who wins the primary on the Democratic side will be a far better president than Donald Trump.
So forgetting naming names, and let's go back to, let's say this was Monday morning. There is
back to what
Monday
was.
morning's it's a long time ago.
Feels like
so would you say politically you were aligned with the Sanders-Warren wing of the party, or what I would consider, and this is me making this analysis, Biden-Bloomberg? Where do you fall in that spectrum of the party?
Yeah. So first of all, I would dispute pairing Sanders and Warren together, and I would dispute pairing Biden and Bloomberg together. I think those are 4 very different candidates who each represent a separate space on the spectrum.
Bernie Sanders, Vice President Biden.
So,
where are you on that spectrum?
Irrespective of which candidates you choose, I consider myself to be right smack in the middle of the Democratic side of the political spectrum.
Center left.
Yes, I guess that's what
Okay.
you could call it. I don't like to use labels like that because I think everybody has different interpretations of what they mean, and I think they lead to a lot of misunderstanding. So my preference is to talk about the issues and where we stand on the issues. But if I were going to put myself in a spot, it would be right in the middle of the Democratic spectrum.
So whether you win or lose the primary, will you, let's assume that you win the primary, will you go to the Democratic National Convention this year?
No, I will be here campaigning in the district.
So you're not going, you're also not listed as a delegate or
No.
anything of that.
I
Clearly,
will
think
watch it on TV and cheer a lot, though.
you'll talk to your TV. I talk to
Yes.
my TV all the
Yes.
time. Not allowed to do that in front of my son for some reason. I don't know why. The one question I'm asking all the candidates who are challengers, we're going to have redistricting. We're obviously kicking off a lot of...
Do. And it needs to be done now. And whether you have 2 years, 10 years, 20 years, or 30 years to work on it, I think you do it. We are at a moment in history where I think a lot of people feel like the ground underneath them is shifting. We are talking about very big change in this country and also very big threats in this country. Our politics currently isn't just about differences on policy. We are dealing with fundamental threats to our democracy. We are dealing with fundamental threats to our security. And stepping up in this moment to engage and be part of fighting back against those threats and setting things right again, I think is incredibly important. And I am looking at the challenge that is right in front of me. I would say about redistricting, by the way, this is why it is incredibly important for everybody to participate in the census, and why everybody who's watching this needs to encourage other people to participate in the census. Because if we are undercounted, we will not get the representation to which we are entitled, and we won't get the government funding for the programs to which we are entitled. So this census is very, very important, and there are a lot of people on the other side of the aisle in politics who are interested in undercounting, in suppressing the census count for political reasons. The same reason that they're engaged in voter suppression, and we cannot let that happen.
So let's not talk about threats to democracy domestically. Let's shift. We'll come back to the campaign in a second.
Okay.
So do you think Russia interfered in the 2018, forget 2016?
Absolutely.
All
We
going
know they
back-
did.
So in 2018, do you think they interfered in your own election?
We know for sure that they,
Years about 2020 in their interference.
well, we know they're already engaged. We know they're interfering. Our intelligence agencies have told us this. We are under consistent cyber attacks from not only Russia, is be following the advice of the experts who tell us that the best, most hack-proof way to run elections is with paper ballots, hand-marked paper ballots. That's what we need to do. And we need the federal government to be funding election security across the board.
And so as far as you're concerned, neither the administration or Congress is doing enough on that front.
Congress has tried a couple of times,
Is the
but no.
administration doing what they need to do?
But no, I mean, there is no question about that. And I think it is hard to expect that the administration will when the person who's leading the administration continues to deny that there's a problem.
So I want to shift back to some 2018, 2019 issues. We did get a viewer question. The Federal Elections Commission, the FEC, cited your campaign for some payments to you 2 years ago. Tell us what happened, and then we'll go from there.
So the FEC notified us that that my salary that the campaign was paying me
$11,000.
was too early.
Okay.
So
So a candidate can be paid?
yes.
Okay.
So
Do you find that odd?
I don't, and I will happily talk to you about why. I actually
Okay.
think it's very
Let's deal
important.
with the FEC and then come
So
back.
let's talk about that. I think it's a very important issue we don't talk about enough. So there is a rule that a candidate can't take the salary until the ballot access deadline in whatever district they're running.
So when would that have been
So
in New York?
that's April 2nd
To get on the ballot for...
for the election.
Okay.
We didn't know about that rule.
Did you protest the violation?
We didn't, because they said you did this wrong. So what we did was we addressed the problem. I talked to a campaign finance attorney to make sure that we understood the problem and that we did everything we were supposed to do to address it, which, of course, the first step of which was to repay the money.
So you paid back the money?
Yes.
Okay.
Paid back the money
and
to the campaign.
And you paid it to who?
To the campaign.
Were there
the money
any
came from.
fines on top of that? Or?
No.
Okay.
No. As long as you make right the
and when
problem.
did you do that?
I don't remember the date, right after they sent us the letter. So this was an honest mistake. We did not know about this rule. And you have, when you run a campaign, you have a compliance firm, which is like an accounting firm, essentially. But they are the ones who know all of the campaign finance rules, and they're the ones who make sure that the campaign does everything appropriately. Unfortunately, my compliance firm did not know about this rule.
Are you still using them?
I'm not.
Okay.
So one of the things that we did in the wake of this problem was replace that firm. Now, I would really like to talk about, you asked, seeming surprised that candidates can take salary. It's not something we talk about, but I think we need to. And here's why. If you look at our Congress, it is not representative of the people, right? You compare who sits in Congress to our population at large, and there are some striking differences. Most of Congress is white, most of Congress is male, and most of Congress is millionaires. More than half of the members of Congress are millionaires. So is it any wonder that we end up with tax policy and economic policy that continues to concentrate wealth at the top of the economic ladder and leave the rest of us behind? If we want policy that represents all of us, we need our Congress to look like us. And that means we have to elect more women and more people of color. And it means we have to elect people from different economic classes and experiences. We don't need just lawyers and business people and millionaires. We need teachers and firefighters and nurses. And one of the reasons that we don't get people from lower economic classes running for Congress is they cannot afford to leave their jobs, be full-time candidates for 2 years without being paid. And that's why there is provision in FEC guidelines for candidates to take salary. And we should be encouraging candidates to do that.
So is it minimum wage? Is it salary?
It's based on the salary that you made the year before.
Okay.
Right? So if you have a job that pays $50,000 a year and that you have that job up until the time that you become a candidate, as a candidate, the salary that you're eligible to take is $50,000 a year, right?
So one last question on this one, because I know Mr. Knoll said that this is, in essence, it's an effort. You're here at 3 o'clock in the afternoon. If you had a different job that you were 9 to 5, we most likely wouldn't be doing this interview unless you took vacation time. I know this happened with Mr. Mannion. He had to take a leave of absence as a Senate candidate, but you have to do that. And I don't know if the state rules are different from
They
federal.
are. I don't know the state rules.
So in regards to the FEC filing, was this based on a normal audit by the FEC? Did somebody file a complaint, or don't you know?
It's just a routine procedure. So every 3 months, every quarter, every federal campaign files their quarterly report. And that documents every dollar that you take in and every dollar that you spend.
So you were here about a year ago to talk about a not-for-profit called Enter the Public Square. We'll pause for a second. For those who don't know what Enter the Public Square is, it still exists, correct? What is it?
So it's a nonprofit organization focused on building civic engagement, particularly building civic engagement skills. And we have sort of 2 areas of programming. One is skill building workshops, and the other is public meetings like town hall style meetings to get to know your government.
So is that associated with your campaign, or is it totally separate? Okay.
Totally separate.
So are you still an active professor?
I am not. No.
Okay.
No. So we were talking before about working and campaigning, right? So in the last campaign, I worked full-time all the way through the primary.
Okay.
Looking back, I don't know how I managed to do that. because campaigning is about the
But you did
equivalent to
teach
2
last
full-time
semester.
jobs. I taught, yes, so, but not on faculty at SU. Last
Okay.
semester, I taught an online course in contract with a university in Kazakhstan. I taught professional communications to a cohort of senior government officials in Kazakhstan, but that was on a contract basis.
Just want to remind people, where were you born?
I was born in Boston,
Okay.
Massachusetts.
And how long have you lived in Central New York?
Moved here in 2003.
And where'd you go to high school?
I went to a place called West Hill High School.
No relation to West Hill.
No relation to West Hill here.
Though you most likely wear the jersey and
Yeah.
everybody would be happy. Where'd you go to college?
I went to Northwestern University
And
outside
what
of Chicago.
did you study?
I did a kind of a custom major where I combined theater and communication sciences and disorders. I studied learning disabilities.
Won't even go there with anything we can talk about. So are you married?
I'm not.
Do you have any children?
No.
All right. So have you ever served on a not-for-profit board?
Yes.
What type of board?
So I started my career working at a nonprofit that serves adults with cognitive disabilities.
Okay.
And when I left their employ, I was on their board.
Okay. And what book is on your bedstand right now?
I have 2 books
It's okay.
on my table right now. One is Generation Citizen, which is written by the director of an organization of the same name, and it's about building civic engagement in our youth.
Okay.
It's an extraordinary program, and I'm really enjoying the book. And the other one...
What was it called again?
Generation Citizen.
Okay.
I can't remember the subtitle.
Okay.
But, and the other one, I'm going to get this title a little bit wrong, I think. It is Lessons from the Classroom. Elie Wiesel, Lessons
Okay.
from the Classroom. And it's written by a man who worked under Elie Wiesel as a teaching assistant, and sort of he was his mentee. And it's
Who wrote Night, Dawn?
yes,
stuff. Okay.
yes, and so it's a really moving account of all of the things that he learned
The
working and
Holocaust
studying
survivor
under
and-
Elie Wiesel. Yeah.
So let's talk about the campaign where you are right now. So several county committees have met. Am I correct on that?
Mm-hmm.
All but Wayne County have endorsed a candidate. Am I correct on that?
Correct, yes.
Why did Wayne County not?
I don't know.
Do you think it's just because there's a 3-way race and they just want to get you?
I don't know. You'd have to ask
Did that
them.
occur back in 2018, or did all the committees
All
endorse?
4 counties endorsed. In 2018, Onondaga County did an endorsement process, and then the other 3 counties did a joint endorsement process. They each made their own decision, but
I
they
think
met
they did.
together.
The meeting happened to be in Auburn, if I remember
Yes,
correctly.
yep.
Cayuga has endorsed Mr. Canola,
Mm-hmm.
as has Onondaga, and you've been endorsed by
Oswego.
Oswego. Any thoughts on that particular process? Or are you just moving on to the primary?
We just
'Cause
go-
you're moving forward.
We go to the vote. Yes, we are. Elections are about the people. They're about who shows up on election day and casts their ballot. And one of the reasons that I have been doing this for the last 3 years is that I believe in politics that's grounded in people and participation. And I think that we need to bring our government and our politics back to the hands of the people where they belong. And that is about going door to door, talking to people about the things that matter, encouraging them to engage, and getting them to show up at the ballot box and make their voices heard.
So this show is largely based in Cayuga County. It does show in Onondaga as well. Were you surprised that neither of those committees supported you this time around?
No, I wasn't.
Okay. So how much have you raised so far? Because part of this is about the money.
Yeah, so
Bomber's Law, it's always about the money.
I never have exact figures until we do those quarterly reports at the end of the quarter.
So the
But-
end of December, I think you had just about $230,000 in the bank.
In the bank, yes.
In the bank, okay.
So we have.
You're just a little bit behind Mr. Cronulla, who's I think about $15,000 or $16,000 ahead of you at that particular time.
He was, although a big chunk of his money is money that can't be spent until the general election. So I actually have more money available to spend in a primary than he does.
Why does he have money that can't? Nice to know this today, not on Tuesday. Why can't he spend some of this?
There are federal limits to what an individual can donate to a campaign, and you are allowed to donate in a primary, and you're allowed to donate in a general.
Okay.
And so he's gotten a significant portion. I have some too, but he has a significant portion of his cash on hand is general election money.
But you, Mr. Miso, Mr. Cronulla, you're still about 1/4 of what Mr. Katko has in the bank. He had at the end of
yes, I think that's about
cash on
right.
hand. He had about $1 million.
Yeah.
$1,060,000.
And as I said, last cycle I started with a $1.2 million fundraising deficit, and I ended up raising as much money as, actually, I fell $50,000 short of what John Katko raised.
So let's talk about the people who donate to you, though. So,
Sure.
So of that, and you've raised more than that. You've spent more. That's what you have cash in the bank.
Right.
We should say that you have to count what's been raised and you've spent some as well.
Right.
So you've really raised about more than $500,000.
We're well over $600,000 at this point. We've raised more than twice as much as we raised in the entire primary in the last cycle.
Okay. So who are those donors? Do you have an idea of what your average donor gives you?
I don't know exactly what the average donation is now. Last cycle, it ended up being just over $26 was the average
Do you know
donation.
how many people have donated to you so far, roughly?
Not this cycle. Again, I can give you some stats. So we built last cycle a donor network of over 45,000 people. 97% approximately of our donations were small dollar donations under $200. And that continues to be true now.
But you think
again,
you're
I
on
don't
track
know
at
what
this
the
stage
percentage is.
to go over what you raised 2
Yes,
years ago?
we're expecting to, over the course of the campaign, to raise $3 million.
Do you have an idea of how much of that money that you've raised so far is from within the district and outside the district?
I don't know the exact percentages. The vast majority of it is from within New York. Most
and when
of
you
it,
say New York, you mean the state of
New
New
York State.
Not necessarily 24th.
Right. Most of it is from in the district. A vast majority of it is from within New York State. Some of it is from outside of New York State.
And are you taking any political action committee money?
I don't take any corporate PAC money.
So you will take from an environmental or group of that nature. How much do you think you will have to raise in this primary? It's roughly 2.5 months away, 2 months away.
We expect that by the end of the primary, we'll have raised $1 million.
And you'll go through it all. How much for the general election? You said
Another
last time.
$2 million after that.
So this is clearly a race that will get to the $6 million combined.
For sure. Last cycle, what we saw between the two campaigns and then outside spending, the estimate is it ended up being about $10 million.
So with his money already in the bank, that $1 million that's there for his campaign, you think you can still be competitive on that?
Oh, no question. Yeah.
What do you think the 2 or 3 top issues facing the 24th are?
Healthcare continues to be the most important issue when I crisscross the district and talk to people, because we have huge problems with access. There are a lot of people in the 24th district who don't have the doctors that they need within a reasonable distance to them, and they are prevented from getting the care that they need because of costs, either because they don't have insurance or because even with insurance they still can't afford to go to the doctor and to fill their prescriptions. So healthcare, without a doubt, and that is something that makes Central and Western New York just like the rest of the country.
Okay.
I would say the next issue is the economy, And this is true whether we are talking about being in the city of Syracuse or the city of Auburn, or we are talking about being in a rural town in Wayne County.
I think we just had an announcement within the last couple of hours of a major plant closing in Cuyahoga County.
It is a constant struggle. And when we talk about building a fair economy, there are a lot of pieces to that. So we have to think about jobs, right? When a plant closes, we lose jobs. But jobs by itself is not enough. They need to be good jobs that pay well, because there are lots of folks here who work more than one job and still can't make ends meet. So we've got to talk about living wages. That's why a minimum wage that is a living wage is incredibly important. That's why it is unconscionable to me that John Katko voted against the minimum wage hike in the House. We have to talk about tax policy that treats people fairly and puts hardworking families and seniors and students and vets and people with disabilities first. The 2017 tax bill that Donald Trump claims as one of his crowning achievements and that John Katko still champions gave most of the benefits to the wealthy and large corporations. It did not bring tons of new jobs and higher wages to our region as he promised. And I talk to people every day across this region who have been hurt by that tax bill. And we have to talk about things like transportation and childcare, because if we don't solve those problems, then even when there are good jobs available, the people who need them most can't get them. So it is a very complex issue that requires attacking from all sides.
So we've got less than 7 or 8 minutes, and I want to cover a couple of things just real quickly. Sure. That we haven't gotten to. What do you think of the Trump administration's response to the coronavirus so far?
I think it's terrifying.
So what would you have had them do differently?
Well, first of all, the problem started long before the coronavirus became an issue, when Trump gutted the professional expertise in the federal government to handle a problem like this.
You're talking CDC and Senate.
Yes.
Okay.
And that is why it matters that we have competent people in government, because when a crisis happens, we need to be prepared for it. What I find the most frightening is what I am hearing Donald Trump and other representatives of his administration say publicly about this. I just heard a clip of him this morning on Fox News saying that most people who get the coronavirus won't really feel sick, and so they should just go about their daily lives.
So this is about the count issue, is whether the CDC is reporting correctly. Is that what that was the context of?
I don't know what they were discussing
this is a longer
before
piece
this.
on Mr. Hannity's show.
What I heard him say is that people who don't feel ill with the coronavirus can continue to go to work,
Would you
which will spread.
So would you do more closures
illness?
of the borders at this stage, or are we too late?
I am not sure that border closings is the effective way to deal with this. What we know for sure now is that we have cases all over the country that have nothing to do with travel, right? We have gotten to the stage of this, the spread of this illness, that people who have not themselves traveled or come in contact with travelers are getting positive diagnoses. So travel restrictions, obviously we need to continue to do that, but that alone does not solve this problem. We're past that point now.
Moving on, still in the healthcare area, do you support what is commonly known as Obamacare?
I do.
Would you tweak it at all?
Absolutely, yes.
Would you? Okay, so what are some of those tweaks?
So one of the things that I think we really need to do is work on more Medicaid expansion. We've got to incentivize states to do that.
So would you go to Medicare for all, a single payer system?
I do think that's where we need to go, yes.
Okay.
But those two things are
it?
not mutually exclusive.
Okay.
We need to shore up the ACA while we're moving towards Medicare for all. Listen, we're already paying for it. We are paying exorbitant amounts of money in our system for healthcare, far more. We're spending far more than we're getting. And Medicare for all would not change that. It doesn't cost more. It actually costs less than what we are currently doing. It just changes what we call the method of paying for it. It's about shifting costs, not increasing costs. It's actually decreasing costs. And under a Medicare for All system, 95% of households will save money on health care. And there is a recent report that was published in The Lancet that showed...
It's a medical journal.
Yes, peer-reviewed, one of the top peer-reviewed medical journals. What that analysis showed is that the average household would save over $2,000 a year on healthcare costs under this system.
The world moves very quickly. Last week, a deal was struck between the United States and the Taliban, ending that 19-year war. Do you think, from what you know of it, it was a good deal?
I don't know. I think we'll see what happens. It's already been, we've already seen new attacks post that deal.
Right.
So
more than 3,500 Americans and coalition forces died in that, in exchanges over that 19-year period. Do you think it was worth it for the United States?
I don't.
How about the war in Iraq?
It was also not worth it.
Do you think the globe is warming?
Well, it's not a matter of whether I think, it is fact. It is.
I'm asking everybody
Yes,
the same. So
it is.
Do you think, would you concur with the national campaigns that it's the greatest existential, I don't say that ever right, threat there is to the United States and to the world?
For sure. Science tells us that.
So what are we not doing that we should be doing now?
We're not doing a lot. So we need the single biggest action that we could take tomorrow to change global warming and put us on a better foot with respect to the climate crisis is putting a price on carbon. And that's why I support a carbon fee and dividend. That puts a price on carbon. It is a market-based solution, which is why both conservative and liberal think tanks support it. And it would also return money to every person who lives in the United States in the form of a rebate. So it will also be a little bit of an economic stimulus. Even the corporations who will bear the cost of putting a price on carbon support doing this. We must do it.
Do you think the United States should rejoin the Paris Accords?
Absolutely.
So I want to ask you two last quick areas and we'll close out. What do you think the role of a member of Congress should be?
So I think there are really three main pieces. The first, of course, is to work on good law and policy that represents the interests of the people at home. The second is to open up the process of government to the people that you represent. There are 720,000 people in this district. Democracy is a participatory governance structure. And I believe that the role of the congressperson is to provide avenues for the people who live here to engage and to influence the laws and policies that you're working on. And that means doing things like town halls. That means good communication back and forth with constituents. That means having citizen advisory panels that your constituents get to participate in. It means opening up every possible method you have for participation. And the third thing, which I think is very important and is one of my great disappointments with Congressman Katko, you have a responsibility as a congressperson to use the platform at your disposal to stand up for what is right and to stand against what is wrong. And that is an area in which John Katko has failed us over and over again.
Before getting to the last question, set of questions, any particular interest in any particular committees if you were elected?
Yes, I have three that I'd like to serve on: education and labor. I think those are obviously central issues to our lives. They're also where I have the most expertise that I think I can contribute the most. Agriculture. I think it's very important. We are an agricultural district and we should have a voice in the room, not just to vote on policy, but when policy is being crafted. And transportation and infrastructure, and for the same reason. That is where so many decisions are going to be made about the next set of major investments in our region.
We didn't get to 81.
Yeah, so but it's going to be a huge economic engine for us, and I want to make sure that Central and Western New York's interests are represented in that process.
So last items, and we'll close out. As you know, we do forums here in this studio. We do them. You've participated. You have we've tried to get you to participate in those. And what happens is usually challengers say they want to be in every forum they can, and once they're elected, they kind of disappear. And that's Republican and Democrat. What is your policy on participating in forums, both as a candidate and should you become an incumbent?
So my hope is that once I'm an incumbent, I'll get to do more of them than I get to do as a candidate, because when I'm an incumbent, people will be much more eager to listen to what I have to say.
And your plan is to also participate in the April 29th
yes.
forum that we'll do here. I would assume that if you win, you will participate in a fall forum.
Absolutely.
And if not, if your opponent does not, you will come on to do a one-on-one interview as we did last time.
Of course.
We do want to thank you for joining us. Dana Balter has been our guest over the last 45 minutes to talk during this extended Inside Government about her views on the 24th Congressional District. We'll have her back here in about a month and a half with the other candidates for the April forum that we'll be doing with the Citizens Executive Editor, Jeremy Boyer. We will be back next week with our third Inside Government, we'll be back with the third Inside Government extended conversation for the 24th Congressional District with Democrat Roger Miso in a couple of weeks. We also do hope that Congressman Katko accepts our invitation for March 17th when Congress is not in session and he's in the district to do an extended interview as well. We'll be back with both Inside Government and Beyond the Front Page shows next Tuesday and Thursday. On Tuesday, we'll have Superintendent of Schools Jeff Perzola of the Auburn District, who will be joined by several Auburn Large School District students who went to Albany last month, speaking of getting involved in government, to advocate for more funding for the Auburn School District. And we'll have a next in our series of public health discussions, this one on the Women, Infants, and Children's Program, better known as WIC. Next Thursday, we'll get an update from both Nick's Ride and the Schweinfurth Memorial Arts Center, who are both New York State Downtown DRI Initiative recipients. We'll talk about that. We do want to let you also know that we want you to give us save the date, and we'll repeat this a couple of times over the next week or two, but we're going to have the first ever telethon on March 25th, 2020. That's March 25th from noon to 6 p.m. We're looking for performers to sign up. They can do that here at the college. All the proceeds go to the Cuba Cup Board, which is our food pantry here at the college. You can come onto the college's website and look for more information on that, and we'll have more next week as we talk as well. Before we go, though, we would like to let you know that you can always send us your thoughts or questions or ideas, as you did for Ms. Balter today. You can send them to cozguytho@aol.com or Inside Government, 141 Dunning Avenue, Auburn, New York, 13021. I'm Guy Cosentino for Community College. We want to thank you for watching. We hope you have a good night, have a great tomorrow. Enjoy your weekend, and we will see you back here in the studio on Tuesday night.